Provost Samara Firebaugh. Welcome,
Yeah, thank you.
and thanks for participating today. We obviously cut this short film series on great power competition and the types of things that Naval Academy has been doing. You in particular, you're the star of that show in many ways, as you were for the AI series last year. And the genesis of this was, of course, a conversation about what should the Academy be thinking about carefully as we move forward. Certainly last year, there were so many things that were coming at us in regard to generative AI and the challenges posed by that. And more recently, the conversation has kind of pivoted in a sense to the evolving nature of what our graduates will face after graduation and commissioning, that being great power competition. So, Provost Firebaugh, welcome. Thanks for joining us. And if you could just give a little bit of background too for those who may not be as familiar with your full curriculum vitae and what brought you here in the first place. And you've got quite a bit of time here in Annapolis and even a deeper family history associated
Sure.
with the Naval Academy and the Navy. Please.
Oh well, thank you. So it's always a pleasure to be here and to think about these issues. You know, it's so important to me to make sure everything we're doing in our classrooms is preparing our students for the challenges ahead. So I appreciate that. So I am a Navy brat. My father was a career engineering duty officer, and he was the first project manager for the Seawolf, and he had his hand in a lot of technology in the Cold War. And I grew up in that environment. I was born at the Balboa Naval Sea Hospital. And my mother was a teacher. So when I was thinking about careers, I knew I enjoyed teaching. I enjoy working with people to understand things. I also enjoy engineering and technology. I like to fiddle with robots, honestly.
All right.
So the becoming a professor seemed like a natural fit. And then when I saw the opportunity at the Naval Academy, I thought, yes, a chance to teach naval officers, that is perfect for me. And
So a while ago, too.
It was a while ago, 2001. Yeah.
2001.
And so I came to teach. I came to this organization because I knew that it would be a place that would focus on undergraduate education, but that I would also be able to pursue my scholarly interests in microtechnology and robotics. And that's really what I was doing here for a long time. I mean, I've really enjoyed being in the classroom. I've really enjoyed working with midshipmen to understand these technologies. And that's been great. And then sort of opportunities arose to move up and have maybe a broader impact on the institution. And somehow that's where I ended up in this provost role. But it's the whole career has been great.
Yeah. So you've been here, again, quite some time now, over 20 years.
Yes.
Over 20 years, 25 years coming up. Given your field of study, you've not only seen a lot of massive changes at the Naval Academy in that period, but you've seen some pretty big changes in your principal area of study, which is robotics, as you said, kind of
microelectronics. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I'm the whole, when you think of everything we're doing with generative AI, the backbone of that is some incredibly powerful computing systems. The backbone of that is the ability to make a lot of little switches in a very small space and manage the power for those little switches. So it really is all tied together. These massive advances in the manufacturing of computers leading to the capability to do things like generative AI, leading to revolutions in how we think about robotics and the kind of human-machine teaming. And all of that is so relevant to the warfighter.
So it's pretty clear to me, at least, that the right person is meeting the moment here, just given your background, given your family history and so on. If you could characterize the moment that we're currently in. As I mentioned before, we do seem to be at an inflection point. Just when you came here, your first 15 years, certainly, we were graduating ensigns and second lieutenants straight into combat. Right? In that case, counterinsurgency for the most part.
Sure.
Primarily a Navy SEAL fight, perhaps a Marine Corps fight for sure. And naval aviation and other supporting arms were mainly focused on the wars in Afghanistan, in Iraq.
Yeah, I had my own husband, was a part of that. So my husband is intelligence. He was reserve intelligence officer, and he spent some time in Iraq in 2007.
Right. And critically important to remain prepared for fights like that. We're kind of an all-purpose force, the Navy and the Marine Corps, for sure. But the principal focus has shifted. Can you talk to how you've realized that and what signals you're getting from the larger Navy and Marine Corps that are kind of driving the direction of the institution toward great power competition? By the way, something we really haven't experienced a kinetic version of that. We certainly had the Cold War for decades, but a potential hot war in the area of great power we haven't really experienced since the 1940s, it's argued.
Right.
Yeah.
I would say that what is there? There were so many little things. At first, it was just at one point the National Defense Strategy came up, and there was hey, China is a pacing threat would be a phrase we would hear. The NAV plan came out last year, and that really got my attention. The hearing Admiral Paparo's speech that he gave at the Brookings Institute,
right.
Where he talked about what was happening in the South China Sea with actual large-scale practice drills of landing craft and everything else, really seeing the extent to which the People's Republic of China has invested in their ability to fight wars, the way they're building ships, the way they're investing in these artificial intelligence and machine learning. I feel like there are all the things we've been doing in Afghanistan and Iraq. It was a different playing field.
Yeah.
And now we're moving into the near peer realm. I've been reading books like The Kill Chain, very sobering.
Absolutely.
And when I think about our kids, the midshipmen, and what they're going to go out and face, and wanting to make sure that I am fully preparing them for that world, it's just it's sobering is the thing I would say.
You mentioned to me not long after sitting in on that brief by Admiral Paparo that you believed that the youngsters or sophomores sitting in our classrooms right now would quite likely graduate into war, directly into war. Do you still feel that way?
I don't know. I mean, I don't want to. I strongly believe that I really like the Theodore Roosevelt quote that the best preservation of peace is a strong Navy. I'm not getting the exact quote right, but it's the importance of a strong Navy in preserving peace. I think it is vitally important that we are able to demonstrate and project our military power to keep the world safe. And I think that that what I've read and seen about the Davidson window, and we've been talking about in 2027 and Thucydides trap and all that, that's very real. So I don't know, but I would say that the danger of our students going into some heightened level of conflict is greater than we've seen in a long time. Yeah. And I did read Craig Simons, who is a professor emeritus here from our history department. He wrote an excellent history of the class of 1940 that I read over the summer. And boy, it really had me thinking, because if the 2027 is correct as a prediction with the Davidson window, then the class of 26, our current firsties, are like the class of 1940.
Right.
And I think a lot about how did the Naval Academy faculty feel on the day of Pearl Harbor.
Right.
When they know so many of the kids who are out there.
Yeah, no question.
You can never predict the future.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah, it's a tough one. And
yeah.
We shouldn't be in that business of predicting the future, but we should be preparing.
Exactly. And the thing that I'll say is that the preparation for that is the same as what we need to do to prevent war,
right.
which is to develop or maintain or strengthen our military.
Right.
And particularly when you talk about the Pacific and the tyranny of distance and the nature of the landscape being all water,
yep.
That's the Navy's fight. And so that's why it's particularly important that I believe our nation should be heavily investing in the Navy right now.
Right.
My little piece, because I always believe be the change you want to see in the world, my little piece is to make sure that our academic program is just locked in.
Absolutely.
In preparing our students to be warfighters.
Absolutely. This conversation has been ongoing throughout this year so far, this calendar year. We've focused on one or another aspect of great power competition and how we anticipate it's going to impact our midshipmen, and certainly as they get out to the fleet as officers. Over the span of these now 8 months, right? How has the conversation changed? How do you see things out there on the horizon changed as a result of things that have happened globally?
Well, I do feel like there are some things that I see, like aspects of the great power competition that I see that are here, present, and now.
Yeah.
There was a really thoughtful question posed in one of the earlier podcasts or episodes, where the question was, for example, the fentanyl coming in.
Right.
Was that an example of great power issues?
Right.
And on the cyber front, I think there's a lot. We already know so much of the technology that we developed here has ended up in PRC craft.
Right.
So there's a appreciation for the extent to which things are already sort of happening on the back burner, simmering along. And I would also say that I've been thinking a lot. I've been thinking a lot about how does, you've got this amazing new technology, but all the steps between that technology existing and then being realized in a practical way, and how do you bring the whole team along on that on that journey, because it's a lot.
Yeah, makes sense.
So those are the sorts of things I'm thinking about.
Okay. So one of the mantras almost associated with this particular film series and podcasts has been drawn from a poster that hangs outside the Stockdale Center. We are at war. Are you doing all you can? And we have a classic example of that recently. Luke Miottle, class of 2024, prior enlisted submariner, select surface warfare, goes pretty much straight into the fight from graduation. Finds himself in the Red Sea, finds himself responsible for the weapon systems aboard a destroyer, and he's knocking down real-world missiles that are approaching his ship and other ships in the Red Sea. It really illustrates the point quite well. Are we doing all we can? What are we doing to prepare midshipmen for a fate that takes them straight from graduation, practically speaking, into a place like the Red Sea where they're doing it for real?
Right. I think, yes. When we were down in Norfolk, I was really struck by the early responsibility that our students are getting in their lives.
Yeah.
But I would say an effort that we haven't talked a lot about just in this conversation that I think is great for this is the wargaming that we've been doing.
Yeah.
Wargaming, and I had in this retreat down in Norfolk, I had the department chairs all play the mid-Mace wargame.
Right.
Wargaming is a terrific way to introduce the why into the conversation with the midshipmen. You think about the plebes, they've given this book and they're told to memorize all this stuff, but to have them practice a war scenario where suddenly understanding those different weapon systems on your boat are real, it just makes such a difference. And the main thing is to get them thinking about that why and to create kind of, I imagine, a scaffold being created in their minds. And then as information comes through in their educational experience, they can kind of hang it on the scaffold and develop an appreciation. They're not going to be, early on, they may not be leading on the strategy level. They're operating at a tactical level,
right?
But still sort of understanding how
bigger picture.
Yeah, if you're in charge of the weapon system on a DDG, understanding what role that might play in a fight is an important thing. Could you
walk us through what a midshipman experience is in mid-Mace, this wargaming exercise that has been building here over some time?
Yes, so we have a few different wargaming efforts going on here, I should say. So we have it's history faculty who are using war games to teach historical battles. What this effort is coming out of, we actually have a PMP in computer science who's been helping with this. And it came from the Marine Corps University. I think Colonel McDonough, when he was here, helped to bring this game in, and we've modified it to work with kind of midshipmen. But what Commander Maroon has been doing is he's been going into the Bancroft Hall on Saturday mornings during Saturday morning training, and then company by company, he leads them in playing this war game that's set up on a scenario in the South China Sea. And the exact details of the game that he sets up for the mids will match whatever they're learning in Prono for that week. So if they've just had submarine week, then he'll set up a scenario where submarines are up in front, or so they, and he's got a team now of midshipmen that he's trained up that help lead this as well. And then this experience culminates with a war game as the first night of sea trials. And that's really something to behold. So it's the largest undergraduate war game in the United States. I don't know if there's a lot of competition for that, but I still am glad to have the largest undergraduate war game.
Given our mission, I think that's
that's good.
Yeah.
It's something to behold. Alumni Hall, just imagine tables and tables and tables. Every table's got a crowd of mids around it. And the plebe companies have been divided in half, and they're playing other companies for points in the sea trials. And they work through a scenario, and it brings together all their prono. There's volunteers like me who are walking around with clipboards asking them prono questions that relate to the scenario they're playing out. Yep. And they're throwing dice and making decisions and watching the consequences. And I've now run these war games. I've seen it with the mids. I've run it with a few faculty groups. And it's amazing how you go from, it's just a bunch of abbreviations to, okay, I'm going to use the CWIS now. I mean, they start to understand the different things and how they fall in.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff is just the best preparation for the reality of what they're going to go into.
Sure, and multiple levels too, right? Because when you mentioned prono or professional knowledge that midshipmen are required to learn in plebe year, it can be something that gets flushed. That's been a complaint. But now they're tying that professional knowledge, which is oftentimes a tactical aspect. You mentioned CWIS, a close-in weapon system on a ship. Well, how does that fit into the defense of an amphibious-ready group or a carrier battle group or whatever the case is, right?
Exactly.
So now they're seeing this bigger picture, and they're applying it in a war game in a part of the world where we, quite frankly, anticipate actual combat operations.
So as a side effect, they're seeing the geography and getting familiar with that.
Yep.
It's just a really useful thing. And I should add that we have also, one thing I'm very excited about is we've added a core course in the second class year on maritime warfare that uses the wargaming as well to bring together what they're doing in the class. So it's also the thing, just to tie back to an earlier conversation, the rowing together.
Right.
So wargaming at the Naval Academy is a great example of rowing together. We've got professional development working with our computer science and operations research faculty, working with our history department and political science department on this interdisciplinary effort to engage.
Holistic, interdisciplinary, strategic,
and
all focused on where we see the threat going.
And it's all about really deep learning, because just memorizing a bunch of facts without having a scaffolding to hang on it, you're going to dump those in your mind.
Right.
But if you learn them and then learn how they're used, you're forming the neural networks to allow you to access that information later.
Which will enable them to be more adaptable
Yes.
when they get to the fleet.
Yes.
Love it. Yeah, the role played by the Naval Academy toward that end, preparing ensigns and second lieutenants to potentially lead sailors and Marines into harm's way, that's a pretty tall task in multiple dimensions, right? Leadership and ethics is certainly an aspect of that. But from a technical preparation, taking the pulse of the fleet and the fleet's needs can be really challenging in an environment where the technology changes so quickly, even the nature of the threat.
Right. The challenge is that almost what you need more than anything else is flexibility to pivot to new things.
Right.
And the apparatus that supports technology development for the services doesn't handle that level of dynamic change very well.
Right.
So I was really struck. I just came back. I thanks to support from the Stockdale Center, I took my department chairs down to Norfolk
Yeah,
earlier.
this past week.
That's past week, and it was great. And we went on a DDG. We went and visited with a helicopter squadron and a jet squadron, and we had panels with graduates, ranging from ensigns to a captain who just assumed his first major command,
Right.
and getting their feedback about how their education prepared them, what they see, especially for the captain, what he saw in the new ensigns coming in that he would like to see. And, the technological preparation was definitely there. We talked about, the importance of understanding the fundamentals of radar, understanding the fundamentals of gas turbine engines, understanding power distribution systems. And it's not because the officers come in and are going to have to, do repairs, but they're going to lead teams that have to understand that. So having a good technical literacy is so important for the current technologies. The thing that I'm thinking about when I'm in there is also how do you maintain the flexibility, and that's where really the education comes in,
Right.
to pivot and take advantage of the new technologies that come. When I was reading, it came out a little in Craig Simon's history, but also I was reading the book on Guadalcanal. I'll come to me in a second. But what really struck me was how the officers that understood and appreciated what radar could do in the 1940s. Neptune's Inferno. Yep. Thank you. Neptune's Inferno. The officers that really understood what radar could do had such an advantage. And what was heartbreaking to me were the ships and the officers that squandered that advantage, right, because they didn't understand what the technology could do, so they didn't take advantage of the ability for a first strike.
Right. What a great lesson.
Well, it's a real,
painful lesson.
Powerful
for today's mindset, right?
And you think about, as technologies evolve, I've just been thinking about the chain between the technology being developed and how it's actually implemented, and how much communication and training, but also growth mindset needs to be in there.
Right.
Like you need to have, our officers need to be, whatever you hand them, they need to be immediately asking, ooh, what else could I do with this?
Right.
And how does it fit with what I need to do? So they have to fully understand the problems that they're trying to solve, but they also have to have the innovative thinking to recognize the capability that they've been handed. And that's why, things like the Ares program with our drones and the mids going out, things like that are terrific because it helps inculcate that understanding.
We tried to showcase that a little bit in the short film
We
series.
did. I was glad to see that.
And I love your addressing this now because I think there's a stereotype in the minds of many who will be listening to this conversation that, well, the military doesn't do all that well with kind of an entrepreneurial mindset to take advantage, or creativity for that matter, to take advantage of new and emerging technologies. That stereotype's outdated, isn't it? And how are we pivoting on that particular point too to make our graduates more open-minded to adapting to new technologies, more entrepreneurial in maybe even off-the-shelf technologies that will be certainly a big part of what they're using in the years going forward.
Yeah, I love you brought that up because this is one reason why I love Capstone Days so much, right? Because the heart of Capstone Days.
I'll
really,
give you an opportunity to talk
I
about
appreciate
Capstone.
it. It's my favorite. So Capstone Day is a celebration that's really about the Capstone program, and to me, what that's about is open-ended problems.
Right.
We're not giving some kind of pat thing in a box for somebody to do. We are giving them an open-ended real problem, and half of the challenge is actually translating this real problem into something that's actionable that you can work with. I when I came to the Naval and the Academy is a wonderful place, has always been wonderful. But when I came in 2001, we had sort of a capstone project for our majors, but it was very much rote. It was designing a digital alarm clock, and I'm old, but I'm not so old that was new technology.
Right.
And and it was everyone got the same thing. It was a very well understood project. It had lots of follow these steps, but it didn't do a very good job of teaching kind of creative thinking and innovative thinking. Right. And so I really think
the script more.
Yeah, it followed the script exactly. And I think that we really it's very important to me that our capstone program is not following the projects they're doing are not following a script.
Yeah.
Because that's what's going to happen when they go out into the fleet.
Yeah, one of the great initiatives I think within your tenure as provost is to create this virtuous cycle of bringing in the needs of the fleet, matching it with the talent you have here on your faculty, matching that again in turn with the enthusiasm and just incredible curiosity that midshipmen bring to the table, and creating that loop
right.
to ensure that that gets turned back over to the fleet. Can you describe a little bit how that works? Because I think a lot of people assume that we're a standalone university of sorts, not necessarily tied to the fleet, other than to provide them our graduates. Now, how do we ensure that? That rowing together occurs with the fleet and operating forces of the Marine Corps?
Yeah, so I did. I brought Dr. Joel Esposito in last year to be the associate director for research, for innovation, for research, and he's been actively engaged in this area. And we have a research office that is engaged for some time. We have a standing partnership with the Office of Naval Research, for example, that's been doing research. But what Joel's been able to do is really to step in and see opportunities. We've been moving out, and I would say kind of one connection at a time, but we're getting momentum. And what I mean by that is, for example, with the DIU, the Defense Innovation Unit, Joel and I have met with them. We've got students, actually, I have one advisee, and he locked on to one of these internships, and now he's doing an interdisciplinary capstone project with DIU this year. So, one team project at a time. We had a connection we made with the Naval Research Laboratory, had several projects this summer where they really could use some expertise, and I have faculty who have expertise, so we set that partnership up, and we had several faculty working with NRL this summer through those connections. We're working on some CRADAs with some companies that in the robotics teaming area. So I would say we haven't. My vision is to get to the point where we've got this kind of a clear process of how to engage, but we're starting to get there, kind of one collaboration at a time, seeing what do we need, what kind of structures do we need in place to facilitate this collaboration, and what can we learn for the next one. A key that we're finding in setting up these collaborations is finding a faculty member who's got the right expertise to incentivize their engagement,
right?
So that they can get in, understand the problem, and then help to formulate it and lead a midshipman team in that effort. Right. But I would say, and it's very exciting, and it is a self-perpetuating cycle, because we invite people to Capstone Day. They come to Capstone Day, they say, "Oh, this is really cool. How do we engage?" And then we set up the next thing. And so it's I would say it's growing, and you don't have to come to Capstone Day this next year to see how much it's grown.
Yeah. So you'll be really glad to know, just knowing your affinity for the Capstone program, that some of the most powerful feedback we've received from the series of short films was the realization from folks who had perhaps been away from here for 20, 30 or more years, said, "You're really doing some cutting edge work." And they're creating a lot of this from scratch. They're certainly working under the tutelage or guidance of very talented faculty members, but they're working out the problems, and in some cases coming up with the problems to be solved themselves. Yeah. I think a lot of people don't realize that type of exciting thing is going on around here. If you could give us an example or two, because the capstones are phenomenal. We captured a few of them in the short film series. But what are the things that got you most excited about this past year's capstone, if you had a limit?
Oh, there's so many.
They're all your children, I get it.
They're all my children. I don't want to leave anybody out. I really liked, there was a series of projects, and these had multiple year groups in them, but we did them as part of the capstone effort, largely in economics, but there were other majors represented that came out of the VCNO Department of Defense challenge. Right. And so these are problems that are put out, and in past years, this
they're
program...
rooted in actual needs.
Oh, they're absolutely
the fleet
rooted.
Identifies the needs oftentimes.
The Department of Defense is identifying
Department of Defense. And then our talent meets those needs with some problem-solving skills.
Yes, and so that had been those are problems that were going out to the war colleges. And this year, they opened it up to the military service academies for the first time. So we fielded some teams, and those teams came and presented their work. And there was a team that had developed a very sophisticated risk management framework. And I was, and it didn't even make, didn't make the finals. I wish it had, but I was really impressed by the way they took this complicated problem it's as much, there's a technological component, but there's also like a social science component to how you think about risk management.
Right.
And the way that they had developed that thoughtfully, presented on it. And it was one of those things that I just thought, okay, this project, their engagement in this project just made them better officers.
Right.
So I was really pleased to see that. I think that's going to continue next year.
I think a lot of people will be glad to hear, too, that they're interdisciplinary in nature. So
absolutely.
It's technical, certainly, but there's a social science application to it as well. And if you could describe a little bit of the interdisciplinary nature, maybe not just of the capstones, but of the academy education more broadly, because that's another area that I think people have in their minds some outdated stereotypes as to what midshipmen experience across their 47 months here in Annapolis.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I would say that, first off, I've always thought that some of the most interesting things happen at the seams of disciplines.
Right.
Because that's where you get two people and, they've got one kind of model they've used in one discipline and another model, and they realize they're actually solving similar problems, and then they can bring the strengths of each model together.
Right.
And I've seen a lot of exciting things happening in biotechnology. It's a good example of engineering meets biology. And
yeah. So we're embracing the fact that the future
yeah.
belongs to generalists. I hear that said all the time.
Absolutely.
That generalists represent the future.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I would say that a real strength of the Naval Academy academic program is, in fact, the core curriculum. And I know that sometimes the mids are like that they're taking these classes and they're like, oh, I gotta take this class. But it's absolutely the core. What we do in the core is probably the most important thing we're doing at the Naval Academy.
It's a very robust core, right?
It's a very robust
compared
core.
To your typical college or university experience. Could you talk a little bit about what it is that midshipmen, again, just to update?
Oh,
things
sure.
that may have been away from it.
Part of it is even the fact. So most schools, not many programs, have a general ed requirement.
Right.
And there's things that you'll see in those commonly: writing requirements, some science courses, some math courses. There's a common thread of what kind of a classical liberal arts curriculum that you'll see in a lot of schools. Right. I think what really makes the Naval Academy's program special is the extensiveness of it, the fact that it includes engineering. So you have the math and science and physics, but then that leads into some 3 engineering courses, not to mention the cyber, wherever you want to put that. Right. You can see even on the humanities side, there's 3 history courses. That's a lot of history,
right.
But there's a reason for that. And there's just and also the fact that it's not something you just knock out your plebe year and then check the box. It actually goes throughout the 4 years, and the majors programs are designed to complement what's happening in that core.
It's some significant changes in the time that you were here in regard to majors. Can you give us a kind of an overview of the majors program here at the Academy, and what are some of the more exciting things that you've seen in regard to majors available to midshipmen?
I'm really excited about the data science major.
Yeah.
I think that it's interdisciplinary, to the point of, data science is an enabling technology. And I am seeing to tie back to the earlier conversation, I'm seeing data science is being used extensively in almost all disciplines. Right. And what I like about our data science major is it includes a requirement for electives where you're applying data science to other disciplines. And then as we design those courses are creating an opportunity where we now have an elective in political science or history, say, but it's half data science, half history or poli-sci majors working together to apply this technology to this new thing. Right. It's so fascinating, the kinds of things that can emerge out of that.
You're bringing rigor to places perhaps that didn't have that same degree of rigor.
Yeah, there's an analyticalness.
Right.
I mean, that's what data science is about, is extracting meaning from large, complex data sets.
Right.
And boy, the humanities are full of large, complex data sets. And so to be able to take them and produce actionable decisions.
Right.
And with this new technique it's just absolutely fascinating.
So that gives meaning to being a generalist then.
Oh,
the
for sure.
Analytical thinking with synthesis going in the other direction.
Yes.
The best complement between a technical education and
Right.
liberal arts education. I think a lot of people are surprised when they read that the Naval Academy is the number one liberal arts college
Sure.
of its type and so on. I hear a lot of comments about that. Why do you think people are surprised, and why is it important that we should be thought of as the number one public liberal arts university in the country?
Well, I always go back. There's a John Paul Jones quote about naval officers, and I'm going to not get the quote right, so hopefully someone will help me with it. But it's about how it's not enough to, have your kind of Navy basics, that you had to be, you have to, be a gentleman and
Right.
have a kind of a broad understanding of education. And I really believe in that quote. I think it's particularly true in the Navy because the nature of the Navy is that we are forward deployed even peacetime.
Right.
And that's important to power projection.
Right.
But because we're forward deployed even in peacetime, there's a role in which every naval officer is a little bit of an ambassador as they're
Sure.
abroad. And so that requires an understanding of the world and politics and world's affairs that may be unique for for different jobs one might have in the world.
Yeah.
There's also the other aspect about the Navy is that there's the complexity of being, at some point mid-career even in command of this incredibly complicated technological unit, a vehicle of some kind, and at the same time all the human challenges of leading a group of people and bringing that together. I'll tell you one thing that really struck me from the trip to Norfolk, talking to some of the lieutenants coming out, how much they'd matured and how much responsibility they had at a very young age.
Right. That's something that's hard to replicate anywhere else.
Yeah.
The leadership responsibility. But I'd like to circle back a little bit to something you mentioned about international experience.
Yes.
I wouldn't call it a new initiative. It's probably over 20 years old, but the establishment of the International Programs Office and its focus to I think it's an aspirational goal to make sure that every midshipman gets some type of international experience prior to graduation. We're working toward that, have been working toward that for some time. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of that effort?
Yes.
And why the international experience is so important to Naval Academy education?
Yeah, I mean, it does go back to that we are very much engaged in the world and forward out deployed in the world. Yeah. And so understanding how to operate as a global citizen is part of the responsibility of a naval officer, or at least understanding the context that they're operating in. I would say that we're really focused. It's a nice opportunity in the focus on warfighting to really hone our experiences with international programs to things that are clearly related to warfighter development. So, one area of emphasis for me is I'm really leaning into wanting to support our military exchanges, where we exchange with military service academies. I feel like that enriches us. Not only do our students go and actually directly interact with students in a foreign nation's Navy, but part of that exchange, those students come to us, and so then they're hanging out in Bancroft Hall and in our students here who didn't go abroad are learning about that exposure as well.
It's been a long history here at the Naval Academy of exchange officers, exchange midshipmen coming to us. Can you talk a little bit about how you think that impacts the perspective of midshipmen here to have these international officers living with them, among them, studying with them, and what that means to our future as we move forward into this new era?
Oh, I think that I think that experience is preparing them for the way that we will need to fight in if we have in this great power competition. Yeah. I mean, the reality of the geography of the Pacific is that we really need our allies and partners, particularly in the Pacific. Yeah. So that's essential when I look at this. And so, one of our exchanges is with the Australian National Defence University, and that's been a really fruitful partnership. And I feel like that's got to, as we think about AUKUS and these other relationships, having the students already have an established know each other from an exchange, either them going to Australia or the Australian mids coming here. It's huge.
I noticed many of the exchange midshipmen, though, they're not Brits and Germans and French. We have programs for that, semester study abroad and so on. But many of them are coming from countries that we wouldn't normally expect. Like, can you talk about
like the 4-year exchanges.
The 4-year exchanges.
Yes, those that's. I think just any engagement when you're talking to somebody who's got a different background, and they can and you get a sense of how to communicate, it leads you to better. Whenever you're encountering somebody with a different background, it helps you to understand your own values and thoughts. So the actual choices of those countries, those are we work we work with the Navy leadership and the State Department to sort of identify where they want to have partnerships.
Yeah. Seems to work well, too, because a lot of them, there's a long history that they go on to become chiefs of naval operations or whatever the title is.
Yes, like I think, well, I'm pretty sure that certainly we've had our graduates go on to be like the CNO of their Navy.
Yeah.
And so that's useful for the United States. It is a lot of fun to watch that.
Yeah. So we're talking about this holistic experience that is the Naval Academy education these days, and growing more holistic, and we're creating generalists and so on. There's a lot of people who will listen to this and think, well, education is kind of under threat. Some of the same new technology that we're talking about contributing to the developmental process here threatens education, higher education in particular. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because people are worried about that. Now, granted, we talked generative AI and those threats last year in that film series, but it's still a major concern to the faculty, to people who will be watching.
I mean, there's a book that I actually had my the scrum, which is what I call the deans and the associate deans and the provost office.
Right.
We all read this book called The Great Upheaval,
right.
and it came out in 2021, I want to say. But what's interesting about that is the book really predicts a lot of the tensions we're seeing playing out in higher ed today, and I would say that the importance of education and developing people from the young adult into a career has never been more important.
Right.
I think that the way it's going to happen, the tools, I think that this is a moment where we all have to let go of the status quo where it does not serve us.
Right.
And so, and so, I think that the response, it's natural to respond to a change like what generative AI is like, with fear. But I think that I really want instead to instill that growth mindset approach of how fascinating, what does this mean if I keep my goal of what I want out of this educational experience still in mind?
Right.
How can I embrace this new technology and use it in a way that still furthers that goal?
Yeah.
Or, because I'll tell you, whether you love generative AI or hate generative AI, you can't deny the reality of generative
That's right.
AI. And so it may mean that sometimes for some concepts, really to get at what you're trying to teach someone, you have to go to oral exams.
Yeah.
Or assignments that are written in class.
Right.
But there may be other things where you want to really lean in and have the student work with generative AI as a tool.
Sure. It seems to me that the pace of change, to me, it's always about the diffusion of technology rather than the technology itself. It's how
that's a good thought.
Put the technology into practice. And certainly some of the most widely publicized things about how American higher education is struggling is we've got faculty members, and I'm not saying that's the case here at the Naval Academy, but just broadly in this country, many think of generative AI merely as a tool for cheating, right? Where the real promise lies is that the algorithms and these various different products out there can tailor tutoring, can tailor and adapt to the needs of an individual. Where do you see things going in the not too distant future that will augment the way the midshipmen are learning from traditional faculty members? Are we going to be there anytime soon? Is it foreseeable that they'll have a learning partner, if we don't want to call it a tutor, a learning partner to help them get more from the Naval Academy education?
Well, I think we have to look at the power of generative AI to do that,
Yep.
and certainly some of the things I've seen, like the Khan Academy has got these tools. I'll tell you what, I do Duolingo now every morning just for
Right.
fun,
Right.
and it's I'm enjoying learning Spanish with it. So there's definitely ways in which generative AI can enable kind of a gamification and an interactive way of learning that really helps people to learn, right? And so if the goal is to help somebody to learn,
Yeah.
then those tools are available. I think they need to be curated. I think they need to be. I think that the job one is for the faculty to just understand them.
Right.
This is one reason why I really supported bringing in enterprise level generative AI last year, because I wanted the faculty and staff to have generative AI available so they could start using it in their own work processes,
Sure.
Which is the best way to sort of get to know the technology and what
Absolutely.
it's capable of.
And how has that experiment gone? What's the feedback you've gotten on
It's an interesting question. I should go back out. I mean, I certainly know of a lot of people who are using it.
Yeah.
I hear anecdotally of people. I'll tell you, I'm excited about the capability of using generative AI to help craft active learning projects in my class.
Yep.
And I can see some of that excitement when I look at the things coming out, from the Stockdale programs, and so I think I think it's taking hold.
I'm going to put a plug in for those workshops that you referenced,
Yeah.
right? We conducted 2 this summer in conjunction with the Center for Teaching and Learning and others. And they're going to, some of the faculty will brief out their findings over
Later
the course
this
of the
week.
next couple of days.
Yeah.
And from the ones that I sat in on during the workshops themselves, the portions of the conversations, they are fascinating. So the good news is, and this is some faculty who are new to the academy, new assistant professors, and there's some more seasoned faculty, or full professors, engaging in these conversations that I think it's going to, it's a sign of good things to come.
Yeah,
So many people are excited about this.
I think the most important thing with these things, and actually one of the most important things you can model for our students is growth mindset. So, roll up your sleeves, play with these things. You might try some stuff in your classroom that actually doesn't work. You might try other things that do work. It's just that experimenting, that innovation. We have to inspire that innovation.
So you've mentioned now growth mindset a couple times.
Yes.
And I think many people will be familiar with Carol Dweck's book and some of the things that have kind of spun off from the larger field of positive psychology, growth mindset being one of them. Can you talk about those things beyond the curriculum that you get excited about here in this 47-month experience at the Naval Academy? Things that maybe people aren't thinking about, that aren't related to. It sounds a strange question for a provost since you own the academic mission, but there's many other things.
There is. I mean, I think that a real strength of the Naval Academy is the rigor and the fact that it challenges students, and often it seeks to challenge the mids to what you might say is the breaking point.
Yeah.
And it's not because we want to break them down, but we want somebody to experience what they thought would be failure, so that they can recognize, they can grow from that and recognize that that's not the end.
Right.
And I think that ability to learn from failure, and that is really what you're seeking with growth mindset. Yeah. You got to be able to take a hit to the face and just keep going.
I love it.
And that happens in all domains. And so I really think the Naval Academy, many of the things we do here, I go out and I not every morning, but I try to go out once in a while with PEP in the summer, which is, I cannot keep up with these 20-year-olds. But even to be out,
physical education program.
Yeah, the physical education program with the plebes. And I'm barely hanging on the slowest running group, trying to keep up with them. And
the mere fact that the provost of this institution is out there doing physical training with the plebes in the morning, though, that's all we need to know.
Well,
that's awesome.
Thank
Wherever you are in terms of pace,
I know
it doesn't matter.
I know it looks pitiful, but the main thing is when I see them out there, they're driving them to a level of performance they didn't know they could get to, but then they drive beyond it. So they fail, and then they have to learn, okay, I'm going to come back tomorrow and just keep at it, and then you get stronger. And that happens in a lot of what we're doing here, the work level of what they're having. I think it goes to how important the high standards are. So it's a combination. You need to have high standards, but you need to have a developmental model for how to handle somebody when they don't meet the standard, so they learn from it as opposed to just being crushed.
So without a doubt, the most foundational thing here at the Naval Academy is the mission. It's literally carved in stone or cast in bronze at various places around the yard here. And since you own a big portion of that mission, right, the mental mission, it's assumed that's referring to the academic part of it. It's not limited to that.
I always say we have one mission here. So, when someone, it's true that the academics have a larger role in the mental mission than maybe the physical mission, but we really have one mission at the academy, and I always think that that's an important part of rowing together.
That's a great call. I'll absolutely, I'll stand corrected in that. But as you say, primarily the academic mission aligns with that mental part. There is a great deal of overlap. Let's talk a little bit about that overlap too. And since you mentioned physical education program here and your observations, direct observations and that, could you talk a little bit about your interface traditionally with the commandant? You've seen a couple commandants enroll since you've taken over as provost. Can you talk about how that relationship has evolved maybe over time and where you want to take that next?
That's a good, I just really believe in the rowing together concept. And that I'll say Dave Foreman came up with rowing together. Yeah. I just say it a lot.
Captain Dave Foreman, deputy commandant here for 4 years plus, longer than most.
We were talking about that. In my previous role as Associate Provost for Academic Affairs, I worked a lot with him.
Yeah.
But to me, it really goes to, in the end, this mission, the one mission, develop morally, mentally, and physically. And the importance of the leadership team being aligned on that mission. Yeah. And so rowing together means for me that I've got the cell phone numbers of my fellow class center heads, and that if something is burbling that might be an issue between us, that to reach out and address it early. Right. It means acknowledging it. First off, really knowing in my heart that my fellow class center heads at the academy all have the mission as their priority, just like I do. And we may disagree on the details, but we don't disagree on the purpose of the institution. Right. And having that synchronicity allows us to be so much more effective, and it means that we're, it's trust. Really, it's building trust within the leadership team. So I've had that with every commandant that I've been in this role with. It really comes down to when a new commandant comes on board, reaching out early, and it's just people relationships. Right. Cup of coffee.
Goes a long way.
Goes a long way.
Especially here. It's a small campus. It's a small yard.
Yes.
And it'd be a shame not to take advantage of things like that.
And then there's also a role of the leader to message to my team. So, it's good for me to have a relationship with the commandant, but I want to make sure I talk a lot to my team about rowing together and about what the commandant's world does, so that I'm seeking to push that sense of one team, one fight, through the team that I lead on the faculty.
Sure. Yeah. That's got its own challenges, I would imagine.
Sure. Leadership is a wonderful challenge. How fascinating, right?
I've heard that. Yeah. Very good.
But it's great.
And on that front, since we've kind of walked through this kind of history, what brought you here, what gets you excited about the programs that are going on here, from the curriculum to some of the more unique initiatives within the Provost Cost Center, that being Capstone.
Yeah, love it.
But as you look forward, of course, what are the things that both concern you and the things that you're most hopeful about in the out years as we look forward?
Well, I would say that whenever you're in a dynamic time, there's tremendous opportunity, but there's also some risk.
Sure.
That, if you change too many things at once, you might lose something that, you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, as they say. Right. And so trying to find kind of just the right amount of change is what I would say.
Yep.
Like changing in all the good ways, letting go of the things that no longer serve you, but at the same time not doing any permanent damage, you know.
Sure.
I mean, that's always a challenge, but it's more of a challenge when you're in a dynamic time.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that I'm thinking about. But I am excited about the tremendous opportunity in this moment. You know, we have a core curriculum review going on,
Right.
and we're really thinking about it in a different way, taking it down. Not, you know, the core has been traditionally thought of, you know, we've got 3 classes of history and, you know, kind of as number of classes, and instead to say, no, let's think about what specific learning outcomes are we looking for out of the core. So thinking one was a professional core competency concept, but bringing in, you know, also these cross-cutting objectives like developing the ability to innovate. So I just think that that's going to be pretty exciting as it rolls out, and I'm looking forward to that.
On that front, because we've been here almost the same amount of time. We got here relatively the same amount of time. One of the knocks of a service academy education generally, but certainly here at the Naval Academy in particular, is that we program so much of the midshipman's day, right? From waking, which is early, to when they're finally able to get to sleep, which is very late, that every moment of that day is scripted. And at least on 2 or 3 occasions, formally, since I've been here and since you've been here, we've talked about reassessing midshipman time. What are the areas you think we can gain progress there, and what do you think is non-negotiable about how we organize midshipman time?
That's an interesting question, because some of what we're doing with the Naval Academy curriculum is intentional pressurization of their day.
Sure.
And there is development that occurs from that pressurization.
Right.
I mean, learning how to manage your time is a skill that they're going to need as officers. I would say that there are some initiatives. So, but one thing I'll also say, one thing that I'm not sure the Navy is always good at, and honestly, it's a skill that I'm working on myself, but a leader needs to ruthlessly prioritize. Like the leader really needs to be setting the priorities for an institution.
Right.
And if you don't, if the leader does not provide priorities, then everything becomes a priority, and opportunities are lost. So I do think that I think that it's part of rowing together that we could really do ourselves well with would be to row together, to ruthlessly prioritize what are the objectives of this 47-month experience, to make sure that they happen, and then to move out from there. And that idea of ruthless prioritization can happen almost at every level if it's well nested and well communicated.
Right.
But I do think a challenge the midshipmen have is there are a whole lot of things like, oh, you should do this, and they're all individually great things. But for anything you choose to do, you always have to be thinking about, what am I not doing because I'm doing this other thing.
Right. Opportunity cost.
Opportunity cost is a very real concept. So that is something I think that and I think that one of the opportunities of this moment is to do a little prioritization. And so I think that that's something that would really benefit the Naval Academy and the Navy.
Well, you've given us a lot of time, and I'm grateful for it. I know we're getting ready for a semester.
It's going to be great. I'm teaching again. I'm teaching in one class.
That is the most fun you can have
it
here
is
at the
going to be
Academy.
great. 20 lucky ducks get me for double E.
That's great. What gets you excited right now?
Well,
personally?
besides teaching?
Yeah, besides teaching. While we're on this, you mentioned Duolingo and your own personal, professional development. What else are you doing right now to sharpen the saw, to make you better? What advice do you give for leaders?
My advice for leaders is to really stay engaged with understanding what the Navy needs to do. So I love to read. And, I've told you some of the books I read this summer. I'm looking for new books that will help me understand the present challenges. I read the Defense Times every morning. I read the Early Bird. I also read my MIT Technology Review and try to get a sense of where things are coming in technology. That always excites me, and I think it's a very dynamic world that we've got going on right now. So
it's an exciting time.
It's so fascinating.
Yeah, It's exciting time. Provost Firebaugh, thanks for your time today
You're welcome.
and for everything you do for the Academy and its midshipmen.
I thank you. All right.